Let's talk about it. So this is not a video I ever would have expected that I had to make. As you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, I very nearly cut my thumb off. Now, I'll go ahead and preface this video with, if you don't like hearing, bone, nerve, cut, blood, bleeding, any of those kinds of terms, like I'm gonna basically explain exactly what happened and that whole deal. So if you don't want to hear that, or I'm going to have some images here as well, so if you don't want to see any of that, might be a good time to go ahead and tune out. I will give you fair warning before I show you anything, but that's out there. So how did I almost cut my thumb off? Well, I was working on cutting some tubes for the wastegate dump pipe. As a part of all of the exhausts that I've done, I have yet to do that, which I really wish I had done it sooner, just so that it was finished and I wouldn't have to be doing it right now after the car has already been started and I'm basically prepping to go to the dyno. So yes, the car has already started. I'm sort of in between a couple of different videos, which is starting the car for the first time, prepping it for the dyno, and then obviously the dyno video. So yeah, if you're watching this, the news is out, the car runs, it idles, all that stuff. You guys will get to see the first startup and witness all of that stuff in the next video, so sorry to spoil it for you, but I figured at this point, with the timeline that we've been looking at, you probably could have guessed. And if you've been following my social media, my Instagram or my TikTok, you would have already seen that anyway. So basically, I was using my bandsaw to try and cut some 1 3/4 inch steel tubing so that I could fabricate a wastegate dump pipe. Now, what I was really doing during this time was, I've noticed that the bandsaw doesn't cut straight vertical. It cuts correctly from side to side. If the tube is, coming this way, it cuts correctly left to right. But when the bandsaw is coming down, it almost chops at a bit of an angle. And so what I was essentially doing was just changing the position of the portable bandsaw inside of the stand, and I was making a small cut, and then I would look at it and see like if that changed the angle at all, and then I would adjust the position of the bandsaw again, and then make a cut and all that kind of stuff. At this point, I think it's more of an issue with the stand not coming straight vertical. It actually has, instead of coming perfectly straight down, it actually kind of cuts at a bit of an angle. At least that's the theory. But in any case, I was using some scrap 3-inch tube that I used to fabricate the exhaust, and I was cutting little pieces off of the end of it. And I was holding that with my hand, which, PSA, here's your safety announcement. If you're ever using any kind of cutting equipment, make sure that you are clamping your equipment and that you're not holding it with your hands, or if you are holding it with your hands, make sure that you're very, very far away from the blade. So let me show you what I was doing. So here is the culprit in question, and here is the new clamp that I just got that will work for this bandsaw, so that I never have to put my hands anywhere near this blade ever again. It is currently unplugged, so it has no power, but I'm obviously going to try not to put my hands too close to it. So essentially, I was cutting this little 3-inch piece of tube, and as I was cutting these little slices off to try and make sure that it was cutting perfectly vertical, as I was cutting those little pieces off, my hand was moving closer and closer to the bandsaw, and I'm realizing this in hindsight, but I must have been holding it more like this. So essentially, I was bracing this up against that little backstop, but instead of clamping down this way, I was holding it more like this. And so whenever I was dropping this handle with my right hand to bring the blade down, pretty much once it finished the cut, my thumb was the last thing in line of the blade. So yeah, obviously I was wearing this glove, which I've heard now that I've been doing some research that you're actually not really supposed to wear gloves while you're using serrated blades, for the exact reason that what most likely happened is that it caught the fabric on the top of this glove and actually pulled my thumb towards the blade and obviously cut it pretty deep. So I've got a clamp that will go inside of this little rail. Again, link in the description. If you're using a bandsaw of this, Harbor Freight variety, where it's a portable bandsaw inside of a stand, you want to be clamping your work and you don't want to be having your hands in there. Obviously, I am the testament to why you don't want to do that. So pretty much as soon as I realized that it had happened, or what was happening, I, unplugged the bandsaw as fast as I could. I took the glove off and got a look at it, and very quickly realized this ain't something I'm just going to be able to put a Band-Aid on. Like, I need to go to the hospital immediately. There was the floor of this garage looked like a war zone. There was a lot of blood. It was not good. And it didn't feel good either. So, call 911, they send paramedics out, yada, yada, yada. They take me to the hospital. And they did x-rays, and their determination at the time was that it did not need additional operation. So more or less, they just stitched me up, and they put sutures in the wound to basically pull the tissue, the skin, back together, and then wrapped it up with gauze and bandages and everything. And they gave me some prescriptions for some pain medicine and some antibiotics, and sent me home. So for those of you who use power tools and saws, table saws, circular saws, whatever, and you think, I'm pretty safety minded, this won't happen, I'm really good about keeping my hands away from blades, this won't happen to me type of a thing. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, I'm holding this in a way that, like, once it comes down, it won't get my, any of my fingers or anything like that. It's always one of those things, it can't happen to me, or it won't happen to me. I'm the perfect example of that. I really did not think this is the type of thing that I would ever do, there's a type of mistake that I would ever make. But yeah, if you need an example to use, you can use me as an example. So right now I'm about to show what my thumb looked like after they stitched it together. It's I don't have a good photo of it before it was stitched together, for those people out there who would want to see that. Unfortunately, I don't have that. It was either right after it happened, it was open, or 5 seconds after that, when I wrapped it with paper towels and tried to stop the bleeding, it was covered all the way up until they stitched it, pretty much. So if you don't want to see a very badly damaged finger, then look away or swap over or whatever in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, not good. Not good at all. So basically, it's been about a week since this happened. It was Wednesday of last week. It was Wednesday night. And so I basically went the entire weekend until yesterday, Tuesday morning, when I went to the hand specialist to have them review the x-rays and tell me how bad it was, or if they were going to need to go in and do any extra operation. So basically, it's the best case scenario. Because of the fact that I kind of cut along the side of my thumb, I basically cut from, just about underneath the bottom of my fingernail up the side of my thumb. I avoided cutting any of the major tendons that run across the top or across the bottom. So, obviously once once the skin is healed and we take the sutures out, and the bone heals in the next 3 to 4 weeks is what they told me, I should be able to retain most of the range of motion of this left thumb, which is good. So all things considered, it could have been a lot worse. I could have lost the tip of my thumb altogether, which, with working with nuts and bolts and all that kind of stuff, would have been terrible for my automotive future. Obviously not the end of the world. I'm right-handed, fortunately. So I still would have been able to do all of the fine detail with this hand and just kind of make it work over here. But fortunately, we're going to give this 2 thumbs up. So what does that mean for the car? Well, I still have 3 main boxes to check. 3 main boxes to check. Well, I had 4, but one of those has been crossed off. My buddy Joey, who you might know as Not Another Drifter, works out at Lanier. So we've been, good car friends for, I don't know, about 6 months now. I met him a little while back, actually, when I sold him a turbo manifold from this car, because he's also K-swapping his FRS. Anyway, he came over on Monday night to help me heat wrap my exhaust and get my turbo heat blanket installed. So I'll show you that. Joey came over and helped me install my Funk Motorsports turbo blanket, which is an absolute unit of a turbo blanket because of the fact of how close it is to this fuse box. Really not trying to just melt this to the ground. So this is an absolute must, and there's a chance that after it's running and I see how the engine bay temps look, I may actually just take the turbine housing in to get Cerakoted, as well as the turbo downpipe and the turbo manifold, which, as you can see, is not wrapped right now. He came over, helped me get that wrapped, helped me put this on. Well, I say helped. He did these for me, which was awesome. Shout out to him. Great friend, awesome dude. If you're not following his YouTube or any of his social medias, make sure you go do that. Super, super cool dude. Again, it's Not Another Drifter. I'll put it somewhere here on screen. But so the last 3 boxes I have to check. I need to run the lines for my catch can, which I believe I'm going to mount off of this little tab right here on the driver's side of the engine bay, because all of this is just so busy. There's really nowhere else to put it. I've tried finagling the catch can down in here. I can't slot it into this gap. There's not enough room. It won't sit in here. So pretty much just about my only option without, like locating the battery in the trunk and moving the fuse box to there and then having like a swirl pot type of deal without going to that extreme. Pretty much it's just going to mount right here on this tab with this little threaded hole in it. So I need to create a mount for that because the mounts for the catch can aren't just a single hole. And then I need to run the lines for that. I think I might be able to do that. I will have to just kind of see what I'm capable of doing while not being able to really bend or use this thumb at all. So that's checkbox number 1. Checkbox number 2 is to run the vacuum lines for my blow-off valve and the pressure reference line for my wastegate. I already took my charge pipe off of this side of the turbo and took that to heat lightning to have a bung welded in so that I can use that as a pressure reference. That's something that I would have done myself if I could weld and I didn't have this as a problem. I would have just welded that in there myself, but we're making it work. And then the last checkbox is the thing that I was originally trying to do when I cut my thumb really bad, which is make a wastegate dump pipe, because my wastegate is all the way down here. Yeah, you can see that guy right there. Now that currently is just open. There is no pipe coming off of this end right here. And I can't really have it just dumping open exhaust into my engine bay right above my coolant hose right here and just gassing up this whole half of the engine bay. Like, that's not gonna work. So I need to create a pipe that will essentially just run down under the turbo manifold back here and then dump it out underneath the car. Obviously, I would like to have it recirculated into the turbo downpipe, but that will be something that I do in the future. I don't really have, at this point, I'm just trying to get this thing running into the dyno. I will probably take it to heat lightning and have them do that for me later on down the road. But for right now, I've got 3 check boxes. AN lines and the mount for the oil catch can, vacuum lines for blow off and wastegate, and then the wastegate dump pipe. Now, am I going to be able to weld, cut and weld a wastegate dump pipe without really the use of this hand, because I can't grab anything, because I can't really put any pressure on this thumb, so I can't, use it as a pincher? I don't know. We'll have to find out, but I'm going to try and give it a shot this coming weekend, and if I'm successful, that's the last big checkbox that's going to require a lot of effort. And then potentially we can get to the dyno next Friday. So that's kind of where we're at. Obviously doesn't feel good to, one, almost cut my thumb off, and I have now given myself some permanent damage to this thumb, even though it 90% will be, you know, the same range of motion and movement, but it's never going to be exactly the same as it was. And obviously feels bad that I have to slow way down to work on this, if not come to a complete stop because of the wastegate dump. Again, I'm really kicking myself for not having that done when I did the turbo downpipe and the rest of the exhaust. Like, why didn't I just do all of that at once? That is one of those things that is going to go on the list of what I would have done differently. There's going to be a whole video for what I would have done differently when doing this swap once it's done. There's going to be quite a few different types of videos like that once the car is done and running. So yeah, that's a big one. Get all of your, like, if you're going to cut your own pipes for intercooler, exhaust, and wastegate, if you're going to cut all your pipes but have somebody else weld them, do all of that at once, and then take your pipes to get welded once, or as completely as you can, because I've driven back and forth to Heat Lightning, dropping stuff off and picking it back up, like, I don't even know, a dozen times at this point. Just, oh, I've done the intercooler pipes, I'm going to take that and then pick it back up. And then, oh, well, I need a bung welded in it, so take it and pick it back up. Now I need the exhaust done. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, so the good news is the car does run. It does idle. It was a little bit tricky kind of getting everything sorted out with the ECU to get it to hold and idle, but for the most part, it's good to go. So just need to check these last couple of boxes, and then we can get to the dyno. So take me as an example. Be safe when you're working in the garage. Use clamps and get your hands away from the blades as much as you can. Just be safe out there, guys, because this sucks. Like, it could have been so much worse, but I'm very fortunate that it turned out the way that it did. So I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you following along. And until next time, build your dreams.